Hi everyone, Dakota again from becomingaprogrammer.com. In the last video we cleaned up the styles on our nested comments here on the post show page. And in this video we're going to cover hooking up the top stories page to the post show page and creating a connection that allows us to go back and forth between the states really easily. So right here we have these are the comments. Recall that when we open up our app.js file, you can see that our post state shows this story-comments.html template. So when we open that here, you can see that these are the comments is the first thing we see in this header. And I'm going to replace this with an anchor tag with a blank href. And then we're going to add the uisref attribute here. And we're going to put in top because we want to go to the top state. And I'm going to type in Hacker News as the link text. And then when we reload this, you can see we have Hacker News, and this takes us right back to the top state. And that makes it super simple to do. Next thing we want to do is we want to make it so that this 80 comments here, if we click on that, we go back to the post state showing the comments related to this story. To do that, we're going to wrap this this text in an anchor link, again with that uisref attribute, but this time the syntax is a bit trickier because we want to pass the post state we want to pass the post state as a value to our uisref attribute, but we also need to pass in the ID of the post because we need that. So because without the ID of the post, when we get to here, we go to our story controller, and then the first thing that it does when it activates is it makes this call to that get story method, which requires that ID, which is from the state parameters. So if we don't have that, this is going to fail. We won't get the data that we need. In order to send this information to UI router, we need to pass an argument to this post object here. Like, it looks a bit like this, right? So you have within the uisref there is a parameter being passed to, in this case, detail, but in our case, post, almost as if it's like a function. And then the parameter is an object that is kind of like the state parameters object. So that in our case it would be ID, and then colon, we'd have to get the idea, but because that's being generated programmatically, and it's being passed from the controller, we actually need to use double curly brackets and the curly braces rather, and put in vm.id that we defined there. So, but all of that is going to happen within the directive that creates each individual story. If you recall, when we open up this story directive, you can see that the template is views story.html. So when we open up that file, you can see here this ng-pluralize is generating the number of comments here that's being displayed. So this is what we need to wrap in an anchor tag. So I'm going to cut it, put in the anchor tag, and then paste it. And then here, I'm going to leave the href blank. I'm going to use that uisref attribute, and I'm going to pass in post as a value. But remember, we're treating this kind of like a function, so we need to pass an argument, and that argument is going to be a little bit like a state parameters object. So the object is going to take an ID parameter, and you can, just to see what this, let me split this. So this app.js, you can see that we need an ID. So we're going to pass ID here. And then we need vm.id from our from our controller, our story controller. So we need to pass it in there. Actually, that's not coming from the story controller. It's coming from the story directive controller. It should be anyway, because this story directive, that's the scope that we're currently in. I wonder if I can just put an ID here and save. And then when I reload, I'm getting an error. Let's click on it and see what it is. Wait, okay, doesn't like that at all. vm.id, save, close, reload. And it likes that. Now when I click here, I get where I wanted to go. So that scope issue is a little bit confusing to me, because it doesn't seem to me that I've actually defined. Oh, here it is. Yeah, vm.id. So how we got vm.id, it wasn't actually in the story controller. It was the story directive controller. Here, this is the directive, and we have controller as VM, and then we have the scope of ID. And this equals, it's meaning the ID value is on the scope. vm.id is then set equal to the ID passed in through the story directive attribute. And just so we can get a memory of how that's actually happening, if we go to app.js, the top state is on top-stories.html. So we open that file, and you can see here that we're within this dir paginate, which is like an ng repeat under the hood. We are creating a story, and we're passing in the ID story. And remember that vm.stories in this case is the IDs of the 500 top stories. So then this is an ID that's being passed in here, and that ID is then being stored within this story directive controller, because it's a VM, and then .id is equal to what's passed in, and then that is what we use within this uisref attribute to pass to the post within this object that passes an argument or a parameter, depending on how you look at this. And then that's how we get this two-way connection. And now when we click on any of these, we're able to go and see all the comments on a given post. And then we can click, actually this is a link now to the same page we're already on. And then we click there and we go back to the top state. So that's how we do that. And let's add our changes to version control. All right, that does it for this series in Post 5. I will see you in the next video.